Okay, so let's just be real for a second. We have all been there, right? You're staring at your phone, you've typed out this whole novel, a confession, maybe an apology, or that super risky, "Hey, I miss you" text, and your thumb is just hovering over the send button. You hesitate, and then, poof, you just delete it. You tell yourself, it's fine, no big deal, nothing happened.
But is that really true? Welcome to Delayed Consequences. This is the channel where we get into all the weird, invisible ripple effects of those tiny, tiny decisions we make every day. It's basically the butterfly effect for, our modern anxiety-fueled lives. And today, we are putting one very specific choice under the microscope: the decision to not hit send.
So, let's start with the story we all tell ourselves. A message is written, it's not sent, nothing happens. And honestly, it feels true in the moment, doesn't it? Like you've avoided any potential drama, there's no fight, you don't have to deal with some cringy response. It's just quiet. Phew. Problem avoided.
Or does it? Because while it might seem like nothing happened out there in the world, a whole lot starts happening right in here. A whole chain reaction gets kicked off by that one simple act of, inaction.
All right, let's break this whole thing down. I want you to think of it like one of those choose-your-own-adventure stories. On day 0, that's the day you type that message, you are standing at a fork in the road, and your choice literally creates 2 parallel timelines. So you've got path A, which is super simple. You send the message, it's out in the universe, for better or for worse, it is done. But we're here to talk about path B, right? The path that is, let's be honest, well trodden by us overthinkers, and that's where the message stays in your drafts, just sitting there. A little digital ghost of a conversation that never even happened. And what's so wild about this is that the differences between these 2 paths, they're not some big, explosive thing. They're subtle. They're really quiet. But over the course of a few weeks, a few months, 7 distinct shifts start to appear. So the very first changes, you can't even see them. The other person has no idea they're happening. They happen entirely inside your head. This is where that silence starts to quietly, sneakily rewire your brain. So shift number 1 is your reply expectation. See, by not sending that message, you accidentally teach your own brain that silence is, it's an acceptable outcome. So the next time you get left on read, it stings just a little bit less. You've already lowered the bar for yourself, so you start lowering it for other people too. And that flows right into shift number 2, future hesitation. Hesitation starts to become a habit. You did it once, so your brain is like, oh, yeah, we know this move. That muscle memory just kicks in. And all of a sudden, sending the next message feels so much heavier. It takes longer. You're actually building a pattern of avoidance. Okay, so this internal shift, it starts to leave actual physical, or I guess digital, evidence. The pattern begins to show up right there on your phone. Which, of course, brings us to the draft folder. Be honest, how many are in yours right now? This is shift number 3, draft accumulation. That folder just starts to grow, and it becomes this bizarre, sad little digital graveyard of things you almost said. It's like a museum of unspoken thoughts. And because you're hesitating more and you're leaving more things in your drafts, the time between actual, real conversations starts to stretch. At first, you barely notice it. A week. Then, maybe 3 weeks. But pretty soon you look up and realize you haven't really talked in over a month. The gaps just get wider, and they do it so quietly. And this is where things start to get really serious. Because all of these little internal and digital changes, they inevitably start to leak out into the actual relationship. The silence itself starts to speak. So here's the thing you gotta remember. When you don't provide the words, the other person's brain will. Silence is never empty space. It gets filled with meaning. And without your input, the meaning they assigned your silence is probably not great. They're left to fill in the blanks, and the story they write in their head is almost never the one you wanted to tell. And what about those feelings you never expressed? Yeah, they don't just vanish. That little bit of resentment or sadness or whatever it was that made you type the message in the first place, it doesn't get resolved. It just hangs around. It lingers, and you carry that emotional baggage with you into the next conversation, coloring the whole interaction. Which brings us to our final, and maybe the saddest shift of all, what I call relationship density. The connection, technically, is still there. You're still in each other's contacts, but it feels lighter. It's less substantial. It's kind of like the difference between a real thick book and just the summary of that book, All the key points are still there, but the depth, the texture, it's all gone. So let's bring it all the way back to those two paths we talked about. In path A, where you sent the message, you got a confirmed connection. Maybe it was good, maybe it was bad, but at least it was real. It was settled. But in path B, well, you have the same contact in your phone, but a totally different kind of closeness. It's an uncertain, weaker connection.
So it really leaves us with this question. When you choose silence, you think you're not saying anything at all, but you are. Your silence is always telling a story. The only question is it the one you actually want to tell?
Anyway, that is it for this explainer on delayed consequences. I am genuinely so curious to hear about your own draft folder graveyards, so head down to the comments and tell me, what's the oldest unsent message you have just sitting in there? And of course, if this whole thing made you think, hit that like button and definitely subscribe for more explainers just like this. See you next time.